Welcome to People Unplugged, the podcast from the creative team at People Unboxed. I'm Westy, Digital Director at People Unboxed. This is the People Unplugged podcast. Good morning. Well, this month I'm joined by Charlotte Pownall, Learning and Development Consultant and founder of Blue Octopus Learning. I've known Charlotte for a while and I've been desperate to get Charlotte on the show. It's just aligning diaries is never an easy thing. By a bit of a warm-up, if you've ever wondered how personalised approach to learning can change leadership development, you're in the right place. I know Charlotte's a real champion of tailored solutions, and I'm sure we'll get into that in a little bit. But before that, firstly, morning, Charlotte. How are you?
Good morning. Yes, I'm good. Thank you. Very well.
Excellent. Great to see you here. Now, I know you wear many hats, and I'm sure we'll get into that as we go through the show. But I'd love to start by learning a bit about you, finding out what it is you do, and I guess learning a bit about the journey you've been on to get to where you are now.
Yeah, okay. So yes, you are right. I do wear many hats, like a lot of people do. So, nothing special there. So firstly, I'm a mum of two daughters. So I have a 5-year-old girl called Marlo and a 2.5-year-old called Neve. So I'm very busy with them, kind of the school runs, the tantrums in the morning, all that kind of stuff. So, so I have two daughters. I have a lovely husband who's really helpful, brilliant, really supportive. We're doing a house renovation at the moment, which is a new hat that you wouldn't have probably known about yet, Westy. So,
No.
Yeah, so we're doing a house renovation at the moment. But my day-to-day, what it is I do, what I love in terms of what's there for me and kind of my passion is that learning and development and coaching sort of stuff. So in terms of how I got into it, I started out I always get a little bit like, where did I start? Because it's a bit of a confusing story. But I mean, I started, my first sort of job was in PA, so I was a personal assistant. And I've always worked as a personal assistant to leadership teams, sort of that higher level within a company. So I started there and somehow managed to find myself more in project management, which evolved into change management. And through change management, I quickly discovered coaching. As you know, when people are going through change, they need a bit more sort of support, that listening to understand what is it that they might be struggling with going through that change curve, those, the big changes that happen within businesses. So I really found a passion and interest for coaching through there and decided to qualify as a coach. So that was kind of my first step into this, learning and development world. And then I decided I wasn't fully aligned with the company I was working with at the time, and decided to take voluntary redundancy and thought I'd try sort of something for myself. So started out my own coaching company, and that's where I met you guys firstly through sort of networking and stuff like that. And that was going really well, but kind of was very short-lived because I fell pregnant with my first child. So sort of had that expiry date of 9 months was my limit. And then I went back into personal assistant roles just to kind of be that steady income, something I knew that was easy, that could just kind of, as we were going through COVID at the time, I had a newborn child. I just thought, going back to what I know my bread and butter would be the right move. So went back to that, did that for a while, had my other child, my next daughter, and then really,
these doctors keep getting in the way of your progress,
yeah,
don't they?
They do. That is the problem. That is the problem with being a woman. Your career is, it is affected very heavily, which I feel very strongly about. So yes, but it's all got me to where I am, which is actually really great. So I had my second child, Neve, and then I went back to work. Started to feel a bit like, I'm not quite sure, where I'm going, what I want to do. And really sadly, my mum very quickly got diagnosed with motor neuron disease, and it was very short-lived, and she passed away within 6 months of having it. So that was just as my second daughter had been born. So it was all very kind of
huge.
I can't remember it, to be honest. It was a bit of a moment of, life leaving, life coming. Just a very odd time for me. But it was a massive, I guess, awakening of I have to do something for myself because life is short. You don't know what's going to happen. She was only 62. She just retired. She still had all that time ahead of her, and it got cut short. So, from what I can take of it, through all the sadness, was that positivity of just do something for you. That's what she would have wanted me to do. So being completely honest, that is what made me make that decision to say, actually, I know where my passions lie. I've kind of always had a bit of a foot in that door whilst doing my PA roles, coaching, working with you guys, getting a bit of my facilitation up and running. And I think I'm really lucky, actually, that I was that personal assistant to those types of teams, because I have a really unique view of leadership. So I wasn't a leader, that wasn't my role, but I was very close, very connected to those conversations.
Outside looking in almost, like the fly on the wall.
Absolutely. And that's why coaching is really good for me at that level, because I've done it in a different dynamic before. So being that fly on the wall, observing, watching when things are good, when things aren't good, why is that, and helping to unpick. So I've been really fortunate, actually, that was kind of my previous role, because it's really helped how I now support leaders, managers, and all of that in terms of what I do now. So yeah, it's a bit of a whirlwind.
No, that's fantastic. Charlotte, if I can stick with the coaching just for a second, because I've got a couple of questions about that. So how do you do that? How do you manage that? You may have the answer. How do you bite your tongue? I guess it is the question I'm trying to. Does that make sense? Because you're clearly a passionate person, and you want to help people, and you probably do have a lot of the answers. But in a coaching role, how do you regulate yourself to step back and not give those answers?
Yeah, patience, I would say, is definitely the main thing, because it is very easy to step in. So I have sort of techniques that help me, simple things of drinking from my water bottle to give them some time, small techniques to help me remind myself not to jump in. But also, I think from experience in working with people, you become more confident that they will come to their right solutions, and the solution that you provide might not be the right one for them. So actually, I think it's a bit of having that confidence that you don't need to step in, because the process will happen. You have to trust the process. So actually, just reminding yourself of that and thinking my answer might not be their answer, it just kind of helps you take a step back and let them come to their own conclusions. There's a lot of awkward silences.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, the holy grail in any L&D role has always, in my experience, has always been, okay, what's the return on investment? What changes have we seen? Have we seen that? With something like coaching, you're relying on them to make the change and to want to do it. I don't want to mix up my analogies here, but basically you can lead them so far, but basically they're going to have to want to do things themselves and change that. So how do you keep that positivity when maybe you've gone through all of that, someone's gone, yeah, absolutely, I'm doing that, and then you speak to them in 6 months and you're like, we haven't done anything. So it must be quite, how do you manage that?
Yeah, it is tough. And I think given my type of personality, I am very driven, and I am very, I want stuff done, and I like to see action. So personally, for me, the type of person I am, I do find it very difficult, I have to say. When you say, okay, how have you done? And they've not done anything, you're like, oh, okay. I think you just have to kind of remove yourself from that situation and be very objective and say, okay, this isn't my life. It's up to them. And going back to what I learned when I was doing change management is people do stuff at different speeds. Just because I think something has to be done in a month or 2 months doesn't mean that's right. And it might take someone a year or 2 years, but they will get there in their own time. So again, patience is a massive part of coaching, and just not pushing people too far and too fast, and letting it be their journey rather than yours. Don't push your own wants and needs onto that person.
Yeah. And I guess you, in your head, you know that you've sown that seed at some point. Like you say, they may not action it, but at some point they're questioning it. And I guess we were talking before we joined the call about, there are people that I meet now, having done coaching with yourself, but there's people that I meet now, and I think you'd really benefit from having a chat with Charlotte, which is great, and you should do take a real pat on the back. No, that's cool. But so many of those people go, yeah, I don't know where to start, and it's still got that, for some people anyway, that stigma of showing real weakness. So it's admitting that I need help with things and struggling with things. And the people you're talking to tend to be leaders in businesses too, right? So
Yeah.
how can we, and I say we, you know, as an industry, how can we encourage people to take that first step? Because a lot of people would benefit from it if they
Yeah.
just took the first step.
Yeah. I think sharing stories. So, you know, sharing your success stories if you've been through coaching yourself. Like I have a coach, well, I haven't at the moment, but I'm actually looking for a new coach at the moment, but I've done coaching before. So being able
Sorry,
to show
why can't you coach yourself?
because I'm too biased.
No, seriously. I know that sounded like a really flippant question,
No.
but I'm sure people listening going, well, surely you must be able to know. You can just sort it all out yourself. But do you need someone to look at it from a different perspective? Is that
Yeah, it's
why?
asking those questions. I'm in my own train of thought. I have my own patterns. You know, I will
Right.
talk myself out of things or talk myself into things because that's me. I think the real power of coaching is having that objectivity of someone who they don't need to be an expert of your life. It's better that they're not, because then they're not emotionally involved, they're not invested. It's that allowing you to think about things in a different way to how you might be thinking, because you're in such a rhythm of pattern thinking and, you know, how you behave, getting yourself out of that. So of course, I have a lot of tools and techniques, and I'm very good at asking myself questions. But I think for me, I like to have that accountability to someone else. And my questions will be my questions. I like other people's questions because that will make me think differently.
And
So I prefer to have another one.
oh, it's an interesting point that you said there, which was you don't have to be an expert. So, and I think you said in some ways it's better if you're not. Is that because? So does that mean you can coach anyone? You don't have to. You wouldn't have to know the industry particularly, and just playing back to you what you just said there. In
Mhm.
some ways, that's a benefit if you don't. Why is that?
Yeah, I mean, when I did my training, I remember we did an exercise where the person who was being coached wasn't allowed to tell us what they were being coached on. And we had
Nice.
to just ask some really good questions, and they had to rate how good our questions were in terms of how much it made them think. So actually not having that visibility of what the challenge is, because you're already going to start creating the solutions in your head as that coach. And you're going to start thinking, oh, what do I think about that? Or putting your own perceptions on things. So actually, sometimes, not always, I think not having that familiarity with the person or their situation can be really helpful, because you are, you know, totally blind. And sometimes, you know, in work, when you're explaining to someone something to someone who doesn't know anything about it, and they ask a question, it's like, oh, it's a really good question. I've never thought about it like that before. So it's that
Yeah.
same kind of concept of, I don't know anything. Like, you know, think of me as someone that's new to your team. I'm just going to ask you some questions, and it's just a new way of thinking about it. So yeah, I think it can be really helpful.
Excellent. Now, coaching. We've done coaching. I know you're a strong supporter of insights discovery, and I
Yeah,
think you're an insights practitioner. Is
I
that what I
am.
would call
Yes,
you?
yeah,
Yeah.
I'm a practitioner. Sounds very
And
fancy.
you may want to tie that in to answer my next question, because we'll come on to insights in a minute, because I've got some really nice questions for you about
Right.
insights. But before we do that, I just want to pick up on that approach you said. Maybe you can elaborate on your approach to creating those customized learning solutions. I know you've got a real thing about ensuring that things that you design, programs that you design, are relevant and effective for a range of different learners, diverse learners. Those two answers may come together. I don't know. I'm going to throw the ball over to you and see what you say.
Yeah. So I think when I think back to kind of learning I've been in the past, and it feels that kind of tick box exercise of you listen to someone talking, you maybe answer a few questions, and that's kind of it. There's nothing that's tailored to the learner. There's nothing to keep the learner engaged. There's nothing that's very memorable about that training potentially. And I
Sure.
think learning is obviously becoming, you know, very diverse now. It's much more about the experience, being very experiential, and I like to do that for myself. And I think to do that, you still have to understand the person you're trying to train. So what is it that are their goals? You know, within a room of 10 people, you still may have a lot of individual goals of people. So
Yeah.
rather than trying to do blanket training, I like to try and tailor it to more, okay, really in that brief stage, what is it you're trying to achieve by each person? So whether that's, you know, spending time with each person individually, just to find out a bit more about them, how they like to learn, you know, what is it that they feel like they're missing, because that might not actually even be aligned to what the kind of organizer is thinking it needs to be. So I think trying to really take an interest in the learners in terms of what it is that they want to learn, so you can tailor your approach to that. And then also exactly that kind of insights approach of, what are their preferences? Do they have a preference to introversion? Do they have more of an extroversion? Do they like time to think about things and reflect? Do they like to have individual reflection time or group reflection time? How do they get energy? So I think having an awareness of that. So obviously not everyone can use insights because there is a cost associated and a time a cost as well. But just trying to, I think with insights, being an insights practitioner, I have great skills now of being able to start to see signs and signals of what preferences people might have without them really having to tell me. So again, just trying to make sure as much as I can that I tailor training to suit all those needs. So if I know, for instance, I've got 10 people who have a preference for introversion, out of a group of 12, there's probably going to be a bit more self-reflection to begin with. Then we'll move more into pairs, then into kind of quadrants, and then group to get that kind of comfort going. In terms of that psychological safety as well. How do you make people feel more comfortable? So it's just trying to balance it really. And obviously coaching is a lot easier to do that because it's one-on-one. Whereas with group coaching, group training, you have to find that right balance, because otherwise people that have that high extroversion will get bored quite quickly if all you're doing is self-reflection. But if you've got people who've got high introversion, they might not feel that they can be included or don't want to share their thoughts if all it is group discussion. So it's trying to find that right balance. And obviously we're all everything, at sometimes I'm an introvert, sometimes I'm an extrovert. So again, it's dependent on that room and who's around you and how impacted you feel by that energy as to how you're going to behave.
And you're making that sound very fluid as you as a presenter going in. Let me take that back, Charlotte, because from what you've just described, there isn't a presenter at all. What you've described there is very much facilitating the room, reading the room, going in with. Can you take me through that? So as someone who's going in to deliver a course, let's put it that way, I know there'll be a lot of people listening to this going, but what do you mean? How you must have your script and you must know where it's going and you must be really tight with times and all that sort of stuff. What you're describing there is something that almost, I won't go as far as saying seat of the pants because clearly you know your topic, but is that the important thing, that you know the topic and then you'll see where it goes rather than going in with this predetermined idea of, right, we're going to do that for 2 minutes, then we're going to do that, and then we're going to do that breakout. And so is it fluid like that in your head? And if it's not too big a question, I know I'm layering questions on you here, sorry. If it's not too big a question, how do you prep for something like that?
Yeah. So you have to be very agile, and I'm learning this. So, don't get me wrong, it doesn't always go brilliantly. Sometimes, of course, we have times where it doesn't go great, but I think I'm very lucky that I'm quite natural at being quite agile. I can change the situations as they need to be changed to, and I'm quite good at being able to read the energy of the rooms. So, I probably do more prep because I prep for all types of situations. If it goes like this,
the what ifs. Yeah.
So I go in more prepared because I kind of think, well, if we do this and this, this doesn't work, how many different ways could I do that topic? Do we do it as a group? Does that feel right? Do I break it into pairs? Do we use flip charts? So I kind of have all circumstances in my head sort of worked out and prepared for. Like I take a suitcase with me whenever I go training. I have a suitcase. I have fidget toys in case people need something to just keep themselves occupied whilst they're sat in a room because it's out of the norm for them. So I take a lot with me. But yeah, I think it is trying to prepare as much as you can, but then also be prepared for the unexpected and be able to go with that, because you don't know where it's going to go. So I have a script, but it's very fluid script. I don't read from a script. I know the basis of it. And a lot of the time I throw it out to the group. So for me, facilitation is more about getting the group involved and the group feeling comfortable to share, because they are the experts of their worlds. So I use a lot of my coaching techniques with my facilitation in that I'll ask good questions and kind of leave it with the group and see where it goes. So yeah, it's fluid. I obviously have a plan of where we want to get to, how we want to do things, but I like to also take quite a few breaks for the people because I think that's important, but also for myself to then rethink, okay, what could I change? What order do I need to do things in? And things like that.
Brilliant. Before we move on to the next bit, just want to pick your brains on something that you just said there, which is everything you've just described, I'm loving the energy in the room, and you know, we've worked together where you've delivered sessions for us, which is great, and you're absolutely right. But what's your take on online delivery then? How can you do that at the same thing? Is it like a necessary evil, or are there things that we can do in online that maybe we can't do in a classroom?
Yeah. Well, one thing you can do online that you can't do in a classroom is all be together from far away. So I think
Yes,
that's really
yeah, sure,
powerful. That kind of
yeah,
the opportunities that have been available for people to learn that wouldn't have been available otherwise are, you know, that's a huge benefit of being online. And actually, I'm glad this has come when it's come, because I've actually just done sort of 2 weeks of online delivery, which I'm not used to. So,
right,
and I was quite anti online at first, but actually,
yeah,
they've actually been really good sessions, really powerful sessions. And I think you have to, as a facilitator, take an interest to develop your skills to make it work for you.
yeah,
So learning the tech, learning when is it appropriate to use a breakout room versus a group discussion. And I think for me, the biggest thing is not having it for long. So sessions need to be short and sharp online for me. So when I tend to do virtual, 2 hours is pretty much the max, and there will be a break within there as well, anyway, as well, because
mm,
people lose their attention quite quickly. There's so many distractions going on. So I think it's really good. I actually really enjoy now using virtual, and I think my confidence is growing with it as
yeah,
well. So there's so many different platforms out there, and depending on the client, they use different platforms. So you have to kind of get familiar with all these different platforms. But I think for me, I prefer to develop my skills in online facilitation, because there's a world of stuff out there that I don't even know about, how to
yeah,
make it
sure,
interesting. So, like using whiteboards or
yep,
using, online timers, little things like that. Or I had a discussion actually the other day with somebody who's a kind of creative designer for L&D, and I said, can you recommend anywhere that does an online dice? Because at the end of my sessions, I like to, instead of doing, how did everyone feel about that, what's everyone's one action, when I'm in person, I like to have sort of 6 questions on the board, and everyone gets
yeah,
to roll a dice and they answer whatever question is relatable. So, what made you think differently today, or just some different questions to mix it up a little bit, so you're not just kind of all going around the room. And I
mm,
thought, how do I do that virtually? So, I was asking, does anyone have any idea I can get an online dice that doesn't have ads all over it? And someone so kindly then got put it on LinkedIn, and someone then created this online dice for me, out of the
nice,
kindness of their heart. They didn't need to do it. And
lovely,
they were sort of like, what, and then it grew legs a little bit, because they said, what are you using it for? And I explained, and they said, so actually maybe like a randomized question would be a really good thing to have designed.
yeah, yeah.
So it's that kind of getting with creative people, getting into their worlds and thinking, how can I take some of this to bring it online and make it
Yeah.
fun for the learners? So I think it's
As
got
you're
to be more
saying it,
interactive.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. And as you're saying it, I know I'm a quite a creative person
I was
myself.
actually thinking to ask you, but I didn't know how busy you
You should have done.
were.
What you just, yeah. What you just said there, I'm thinking, I can almost see sort of like virtually pulling the handle and it's spinning round and coming up with the
Yeah,
answer, the question and stuff like
yeah,
that. It looks really random, but again, on the screen, that'd be great for someone to
yeah,
watch and go, oh, I like that. Yeah.
yeah,
All right, we'll talk.
absolutely.
We'll talk afterwards. Okay, right. So, blimey, where's that? Who saw that coming? I know we're not going to do a whole conversation about insights discovery,
Mhm.
but there are a couple of questions. I've been talking to people who are doing insights recently, and there's a couple of things that keep coming up, which I think it would be unfair for us not to A, call out, and B, challenge. And what I mean by that is, firstly, the question that keeps coming up is, we can't be doing this in this day and age. We can't be pigeonholing people, which is one of the phrases that kept coming back. And it's like, you're saying that I'm this person, I'm not, and I'm a different person, dependent. And I said, but that's not what insights means, first and
Yeah,
foremost. So there's that bit which I'd love you to cover. And the second bit is, I think if you dip your toe in insights, that's potentially quite dangerous, because you come away going, I'm a blue, and
yeah,
therefore people start using that as a reason for their behavior rather than trying to understand others. Now,
yeah.
you'll explain that far better than I can, but I just think it's right that we call that out.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think those questions link really well together. And I think a lot of that is the responsibility of the facilitator to get right in their training. So it's not, I am a blue, I am a red. because the whole point of insights and the whole point of any of these kind of profiling tools is for self-awareness, to make you more aware of who you are, and how then might you need to adapt your styles, and how can others adapt, and how do those relationships work. So I think, as I would always say with any of my training, we have all 4 color energies. If we're talking specifically to insights, we have all of them. We have them in varying degrees, and we use them at different times when we need to. It's having that emotional intelligence to use them at the correct times. So I think, firstly, no one is a blue person. There is no such thing as a blue person. We are a mix of all 4. You may have a high preference for blue, like cool blue, but doesn't mean you're a blue person. It might just mean you may have to work harder to access some of the other color preferences. So I think it's really important just to kind of state that as a, first to go. And the amount of times, even in my training, I hear people say, oh, it's because they're blue. And the amount of times I have to correct them and say, they're not blue. That's not how it works. Language is a really key part of insights discovery. And again, all of those types of tools, because using the wrong language creates wrong habits and then creates wrong cultures, because there starts to be that blame of, well, they did that because they're red, or I can't do that because I'm blue. So that's a load of rubbish. I mean, it is rubbish in that we can all do everything. It's how much we want to do it. So how willing, how motivated, and how able we are. So it might be that we do need to work harder on something, or we might need to use more of our energy on something, but we have the ability to do it if we want to.
So otherwise all leaders would be one color, right?
And the amount of times I say I can't
argue.
And the amount of times I hear I can't be a leader because I'm not red.
Yes.
And it's just, I think,
but that's such a stereotypical view of what a leader is.
Absolutely.
I think people that aren't red see red as being go-getty, assertive, give me the facts, be quick, be gone, I'm in charge here, and I don't think modern leadership is like that anymore. No. I think one of the most important traits a leader can have is, to a certain extent, is vulnerability. Saying, I don't know, I haven't got the answer. And do you know what? This ties back to what we were just saying there about this idea of, do I admit that I might need help and want to go and talk to a coach? That I would like to think that is changing. And I've seen that change. But I think that's where a lot of that, oh, they're a red and I need to be a red if I want to be a bit boss as well, comes from.
Yeah, and I mean, of course, you need to have a bit of fiery red in you, but you also have to have a lot of earth green in you. You have to be able to mix them and use your emotional intelligence. And I think for leadership, that's kind of that key aspect for me, is having that that self-awareness, social awareness, that emotional intelligence to be able to say, maybe I'm using too much fiery red right now, and this person needs a bit more earth green, or this is quite a big change within the company. Let's dial up that earth green to see how people are feeling and how people are thinking, rather than just thinking task, let's get this done. So actually, you're absolutely right. The way that we're going, I don't think there is a color that is, doesn't mean you're a leader or you're not a leader. It's just how you're able to manage yourself and manage your emotions.
Fantastic. Now, watch this for a segue. Talking of blue, let's talk about Blue Octopus. There you go. Look, nothing to do with blue colour profiles, I'm sure. But I you mentioned it earlier about setting up your own training company, doing your own thing. What's your long-term goal for that business? Why did you do that? And what do you see your role in the industry? What impact are you trying to make?
Gosh, that's such a question, isn't it, Paul? And I've actually...
It's a lovely question, but you know what? It's not often I get to meet someone that I know relatively well who's gone, do you know what? I'm doing all of that stuff. I'm going to set up my own business now then. So, there must have been you talked about, changing your personal life and what motivated you to do that. But tell me about Blue Octopus. What are you trying to achieve?
So what am I trying to achieve? That's a great question. For me, so when I said to my friend, one of my really good friends, this is what I want to do and this is what I really enjoy doing, she said to me, I just don't get it. I don't get how you can enjoy training people when people come into that room and they just like, oh, how long is it until I get to leave? And I was like, fair point. But for me, it's all about that one person. So out of a group of 25, 20, however many people, you hope someone will make that impact. So for me, it's all about helping someone see something differently, or grow their self-awareness in some way, or just have that really positive impact on someone's life to make change. So I'm not going to do it for them because that's not my responsibility. That's not for me to do. But if I can help them do that in some way, and it could be 10 years down the line and they say, do you know what? I had this really good training 10 years ago and they said one thing, or someone in the room said one thing that changed my life or changed how I thought about this. That's all I want. So I'm very simplistic in that sense, that I don't want loads of money. I don't want Blue Octopus to be this big machine. I like that it's just me, and I like that I have ownership of it and it's my baby. And to be honest, I don't think I'll ever really get to the point where I want to grow it to huge extents. I like being me. I like that I'm quite authentic with how I deliver my training, and I am really happy with that. So I'd like to get to a point where I have others that I trust and that I can bring in as kind of other consultants that support me. But I don't ever sort of envision it being this huge machine. I just like its simplicity.
That's such a lovely answer. It really is.
Oh, good.
Brilliant. No, love that. Two more questions left, because you know what? Firstly, how do you find the time? So as a busy mum, entrepreneur, I'd love to hear what strategies you use to manage your time. You obviously talked about family. You've got a sort of healthy. How do you? And obviously, family is important to you. Everything's happening with your mum, and like you just said, it sort of brings things home a little bit. So how do you manage and maintain that healthy work-life balance?
So
whilst coaching and building a company and
building a house. I know it's a bit wild at the moment, but I actually, when I first started out, but when I started getting a bit busier, when I started to get a bit of traction with the business, I reached out to a couple of people that I didn't know, but sort of saw on LinkedIn, who were maybe, 10, 20 years ahead of me in terms of that journey. Sure. So I had a few calls with them and sort of asked them that question. How did you do it when you were first starting out and you had young children? How did you do it? And a lot of it is kind of what I sort of thought. First thing, don't be too hard on yourself. You have to get used to, you can't say yes to everything. So there might be occasions where you're not going to make sports day because you're doing something for work, but then you can make time elsewhere. So for instance, next week, I'm delivering training 3 days a week. So I know I'm going to be out in London. So I'm going to be out early. I'll be home late. I won't get to see the girls. And fortunately, on the Monday, my eldest has this workshop at school. So I volunteered to do that. So it's kind of that balance of, okay, don't get to do that, but I'm going to make sure I do this. So being very aware of kind of what's coming up. A great piece of advice I got from one of the ladies I spoke to was get the dates early. So schools have a lot of dates, as you'll have known from children. Get them as early as you can and get them in those diaries to secure that time. So, thinking about how far in advance can you ask for sports day? How far in advance can you ask for the school play? Whatever it might be. So make sure you kind of guard that time as much as you can. And I think it's just about asking for help. So again, that vulnerability piece, I've had to ask other mums to do pickup for me, but I'll return the favour. We're all in this together. We are all trying to navigate life in a world where careers take over sometimes, or just the demands we have on our life mean we can't be everything for everyone. So being okay with that, which I'm getting used to, I feel like I have to be superwoman, and I just don't think now there is such thing. It's just being as best you can be. And asking for help. So where I can get support, I'm absolutely more comfortable now asking, can my neighbour pick my kid up if I do theirs the week after? So and I'm really fortunate that my husband is also self-employed. So we take a lot of turns of who does what. Again, a lot of planning. So we've got our planner on the fridge for a week in advance of who's doing what when, who's doing dinners, who's doing this, all those kind of things. So you have to have a lot of planning in place. But again, that flexibility of, I'm actually running really late. Could you do it? Or can you ring to put her into after school club? Whatever it might be. I think it's just being okay with everything, that it all works out.
Love that. Yeah, fantastic. Final question I ask all my guests, and you'll probably know what's coming, having heard some of the pods before. What's the ultimate weekend look like for Charlotte?
You're
not allowed to work.
No, that's fine. I probably would if I could at some point, just for half an hour. But the ultimate, which I haven't experienced in a long time, is a lie-in. So sleeping in till past 6:30 would be ideal. And then I would love breakfast in bed, and go for a nice dog walk with the kids if they're on their good behaviour. Nice dog walk in the
or
woods.
go on a nice long dog walk when they're not.
When they're without them. And just being as a family, really. So it's all about family time for me. Obviously, I don't get to spend time with my mum, so I like to try and spend as much time with those that I can around me and spend as much time with my daughters. One thing I was thinking the other day is I really, really regret not taking more videos and photos of mum and me together. So trying to do that with the girls as much as I can, even if it's silly moments, just having that on a record for them, because, you never know what's going to happen. So, I think just spending time with my family and then end the evening reading a book on my own and then going on my Shakti mat. Do you know what a Shakti mat is?
No.
Oh, it's heaven. It's like an acupuncture mat. So it's this mat that's got all these different, like, loads of needles and you just lie on it. Yeah, I fall asleep on it pretty much every night. Yeah, I think that's actually my golden.
As you were describing it, in my head, if you'd have asked me what it was, I'd have guessed. And do you remember those beaded seats that people started putting on their cars? Those wooden things. I was thinking, she's laying on a wooden mat.
Yeah, no. So it's it's a soft mat.
On it.
Yes, it's a soft mat, and then you can get different levels of how sort of sharp the needles are, and they just put they're into the right pressure points. So it's kind of like a mini acupuncture. But I use it every night, and it really helps me sleep. It really helps my mood. Google it afterwards; they're really good.
You're fantastic. Yeah, I'll put it in the show notes, so we'll have a look. Brilliant, Charlotte. We are running a little long, so but I do want to give you the opportunity to let people know if they want to contact you, and why wouldn't they? If they want to learn more about the work that you do, whether that be talking to you about coaching opportunity, talking to you about what you do at Blue Octopus, or even some of your insights, how can people best contact you?
Yeah, absolutely. So LinkedIn, I'm on LinkedIn under Charlotte Pownall, so you can find me via there. My email address is blueoctopuslearning.co.uk. Can't say it wrong, can I?
Well,
put them in the link.
You don't send yourself emails that often, do you?
Yeah, no, I know.
So Charlotte at blueoctopustraining.co.uk.
Blueoctopuslearning.co.uk.
Let's do it one more time and get it right.
Charlotte at blueoctopuslearning.co.uk. And I don't know my phone number, which is terrible. But
don't give that up.
I wouldn't know that. So yes, so LinkedIn is an easy one, which we can then connect on via after there. But that's it.
Fantastic, Charlotte. Thanks so much for your time. I've loved chatting. I knew we would. I knew we'd really enjoy it, and hopefully people have found something useful as well. So I'll just I'll play the outro, and I'll see you on the other side.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks for joining us today. Feeling curious to learn more about how we help people remember stuff? Well, why not sign up for a free trial of our AI-powered bite-sized learning app, BentoBot? You can do that easily at bentobot.com. And you can catch up on interviews with all of our previous guests by subscribing to this pod via Apple Podcasts or any podcast platform. Till next time, take care.